A plane vanishes mid-flight, no crash, no signal, no wreckage. What really happened to MH370? The truth is more shocking than you think. The dense green jungles of Southeast Asia hold secrets few humans have ever seen. Some believe one of those secrets is the final resting place of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370. It's a theory that refuses to fade. What if the Boeing 777 didn't crash into the ocean at all, as many people say? What if it veered off course, flew low under radar, and eventually ran out of fuel, crashing silently into the thick, uncharted forest, somewhere deep in a remote part of Southeast Asia, maybe in Cambodia or northern Malaysia? Think about it. Some parts of those jungles are so untouched by civilization you could hide an entire town and no one would know. Satellite images have circulated online. In one of the most shared photos, hidden beneath the dense canopy, you can spot what looks like the outline of a plane. It sparked a frenzy. Some believed it was MH370, others dismissed it as shadows or a trick of the foliage. But the image was enough to make people look twice. Aviation experts and online sleuths zoomed in, traced outlines, analyzed flight paths. What if the plane came down there and we just haven't reached it yet? Now here's where things get strange. A disturbing story began spreading not long after the ghost cabin theory. According to this idea, the plane didn't disintegrate in midair, it didn't explode. It stayed intact through the crash, and inside that sealed cabin the passengers never left their seats. The theory claims that due to a sudden loss of cabin pressure, everyone on board lost consciousness within minutes. With no one awake to guide it, the plane flew on autopilot until it ran out of fuel and crashed, possibly gently enough to keep the fuselage mostly intact. And because of the thick jungle and remote location, no one has ever found it. It just vanished. Here's the chilling part. In this theory, the bodies inside remained seated, still strapped in. Over time, nature reclaimed the wreckage. Trees grew around it, wildlife moved in. The passengers became like statues, preserved by the sealed air inside, mummified by the elements. Of course, this sounds like something out of a horror movie, but this theory pulls in parts of real science too. Planes have been found years after crashes in jungles, and for those who believe in this version of events, MH370 is still out there. Not at the bottom of the ocean, not blown to pieces, still whole, waiting quietly in a green tomb, far from any eyes. The kind of place only satellites or the rarest drone might one day rediscover. But now let's talk about the theory most experts still point to, the Southern Indian Ocean. On paper, it's the most logical explanation. But even this so-called official version leaves people scratching their heads. Here's what we know. After MH370 took off from Kuala Lumpur, everything seemed normal. Then, not long after entering Vietnamese airspace, the plane suddenly disappeared from civilian radar. No mayday call, no distress signal, just gone. But military radar picked up something odd. An unknown aircraft turning sharply off course, heading west over the Strait of Malacca. It didn't match the flight path at all. Many believe that was MH370. Then came tiny satellite communications between the plane and a satellite called Inmarsat, which kept pinging for hours after the plane vanished from radar. The data suggested MH370 flew for about 6 more hours before finally plunging into the ocean. But the location those pings point to is one of the most isolated places on Earth. We're talking about the Southern Indian Ocean, a stretch of water so empty and vast even cargo ships rarely pass through it. If you wanted to disappear something forever, this is the place you'd pick. And that's exactly where investigators believe the plane went down, over 1,500 miles off the coast of Western Australia. Search teams launched one of the largest ocean hunts in history. They combed thousands of square miles, deployed deep-sea sonar and underwater drones. They found nothing. For years, not a single trace. Then finally, some debris started turning up. Not in the drop zone, but scattered across beaches in Madagascar, Reunion Island, and Mozambique. A flaperon, a wing flap, some interior panels. Experts say these parts almost certainly came from a Boeing 777 and matched MH370. So why didn't they find the main wreckage in the area they searched? That's the mystery. Maybe the plane glided farther than expected. Maybe the ocean currents scattered it. Or maybe it never actually crashed there. That's where conspiracy starts creeping in. Some people think the data was faked, that the satellite signals were manipulated to hide the real location, that someone didn't want this plane to be found. Others believe the crash site is real, but the ocean itself is hiding the evidence. The Southern Indian Ocean is known for its brutal underwater terrain, deep trenches, jagged ridges, and powerful currents. If the plane sank into one of those canyons, it could still be intact on the seafloor 15,000 feet below the surface. That's deeper than the Titanic. Some parts of that seabed have never even been mapped. This theory is scary in its own way, not because it's supernatural, but because it shows how vulnerable we still are. In a world filled with satellites and GPS, a massive airliner may be vanished in an ocean no one watches, and we still don't know exactly where it is. What if Flight MH370 was never in the pilot's control at all? What if someone somewhere took over the plane without ever stepping on board? This is the core of one of the most gripping and unsettling theories, the cyber hijack hypothesis. The idea is simple but terrifying. Modern planes, including the Boeing 777, are flying computers. They rely on complex avionics systems, autopilot, satellite communications, and digital navigation. And like any system that runs on code, it can be hacked. Some cyber experts have claimed that MH370 could have been remotely accessed through its Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, or ACARS. This system sends automated messages between the aircraft and ground stations, including engine data and position updates. And here's the thing, ACARS was manually turned off during MH370's flight. Not crashed, not glitched, manually disabled. That's a red flag for many. If someone had gained access to the system, they could have rerouted the plane, disabled communications, and even locked the pilots out of key controls. The cockpit door was already reinforced after 9/11, making it nearly impossible to breach from the cabin. But what if the threat didn't come from the passengers? What if it came from a laptop across the world? There are claims, though never officially confirmed, that Boeing aircraft have a remote takeover mode in extreme emergencies. It's designed to let ground operators land the plane safely if the crew becomes incapacitated. Boeing has denied this publicly, but the rumor lives on. Could someone have exploited such a backdoor? One name always pops up when this theory is mentioned: Philip Wood. He was an American tech executive on MH370, reportedly carrying sensitive data. Some theorists believe he was a target, and that the plane was hijacked digitally to intercept something, or someone, on board. But what? If MH370 really was hijacked remotely, the next question is why? Why this flight, out of all others? Why fly it off course, disable communications, and send it vanishing into the most remote parts of the world? That's where the cargo conspiracy comes in, and things start to get even stranger. Flight MH370 wasn't just carrying passengers. According to the official cargo manifest, the plane was transporting over 5 tons of electronic equipment, including lithium-ion batteries, radio accessories, and communication devices. On paper, it all seems routine, but parts of the manifest raised eyebrows. Some of the cargo wasn't properly screened, and some items were labeled in vague terms like electrical equipment without detailed explanation. Now here's where it links back to Philip Wood, the tech executive who was traveling on MH370. He worked for IBM, and some online investigators claim he had access to sensitive defense-related data, possibly involving advanced microchips or surveillance systems. Whether or not that's true, the theory says MH370 wasn't targeted for who was on board. But what? Some believe the plane was transporting classified technology, possibly related to military communications or radar-evading components. The kind of equipment you don't want falling into the wrong hands. And if someone did want it, whether a state actor, a private group, or something in between, intercepting the cargo mid-flight would have been the perfect opportunity. There's even speculation that the plane was being followed, that another aircraft was trailing MH370 at a high altitude, outside radar range, guiding it toward a controlled crash, or an emergency landing, somewhere off-grid. In this version of events, the cargo is removed, the plane is either destroyed or hidden, and the official story is buried under a pile of satellite data and inconclusive investigations. If Flight MH370 was carrying something it shouldn't have, or something someone desperately wanted to keep from reaching Beijing, what would the response look like? Some believe we already saw it, just not on the news. This is the heart of the shadow military interception cover-up theory. Building off the cargo conspiracy, this theory suggests MH370 was never meant to reach its destination, that the flight was quietly intercepted, possibly by military aircraft, before being taken down or redirected without warning. The motivation? Sensitive or unauthorized cargo, possibly experimental tech, possibly something involving global security interests. Either way, someone wanted it stopped. According to several radar data sources, MH370 performed a strange turn westward shortly after disappearing from civilian tracking. It flew back across the Malay Peninsula and into one of the busiest military zones in the region, right through areas monitored by Thai, Malaysian and even US allied forces. And yet, no one said a word. That silence? It speaks volumes to some theorists. If MH370's cargo included unregistered military tech, perhaps something under embargo or quietly moved for covert research, then the route alone might have triggered a response. The plane's disappearance just happens to align with several known air defense corridors. The idea is that either Malaysian or allied forces detected the rogue signal and scrambled fighters to intercept. Here's where things get darker. Some believe the intercept went too far, that the plane was shot down by mistake or forced to land in secret, that the wreckage was either sunk deliberately or never released to the public. Why? Because admitting a military error like that, or worse, a preemptive strike, could spark global outrage and political disaster. Others say the military knew about the flight deviation but couldn't risk public involvement. It's easier to create a mystery than explain a geopolitical accident. Think about it. If multiple nations tracked MH370, why did none of them release full radar logs? Why did key information only surface years later in bits and pieces? Even eyewitnesses on islands in the Indian Ocean have claimed they saw a low-flying jet the same night MH370 vanished. One report from the Maldives described a white jumbo jet with red markings roaring overhead, flying unusually low. That description matches MH370. If flight MH370 was intercepted mid-air under mysterious circumstances, as some believe, then the most logical question is, where did it go? One theory has an answer so secretive, so perfectly isolated, it seems made for a story like this. Diego Garcia. This tiny atoll in the middle of the Indian Ocean isn't just a speck on the map, it's home to one of the most heavily guarded US military bases on Earth. And according to many believers of the military interception theory, this is where MH370 might have ended up. Let's connect the dots. The altered flight path after MH370 vanished from civilian radar, put it back across Malaysia and into the Indian Ocean where military radar continued to track it. The route, not far from Diego Garcia. It's roughly 2,300 miles southwest of Malaysia, a long shot for a wounded or hijacked plane, but not impossible for a Boeing 777 running on autopilot. Now, if a military intercept took place, and authorities didn't want to risk downing a civilian aircraft over water, redirecting it to a secure location would make more sense, a place away from cameras, away from witnesses. Diego Garcia fits that bill better than anywhere else. Some say the plane was forced to land there under classified orders, that the sensitive cargo discussed earlier, possibly related to defense tech, was removed quietly. Others believe the passengers were held temporarily, then the plane dismantled and sunk, leaving behind no evidence. It's a disturbing theory, but it lingers because of the silence. Adding to the mystery, there were reports, unverified but persistent, of a phone signal pinging from Diego Garcia shortly after the plane's disappearance. Some claim it came from Philip Wood's phone, the same tech executive linked to the cargo conspiracy. The message supposedly said he was being held on a US base and smuggled it out using hidden metadata. The story was dismissed as a hoax, but for many, it was one clue too many. Could MH370 have landed on an island so classified that its presence could be wiped from records? Could a mistake or covert operation be so damaging, it demanded full silence from every government involved? It sounds like something out of a spy movie. But, in a world where secrecy often masks truth, Diego Garcia has become the perfect symbol of what could be hiding behind the curtain. Not everything lost stays lost by accident. At this point, we've covered theories grounded in technology, politics, and secrecy. But there's one idea that reaches far beyond the limits of our current understanding. What if flight MH370 didn't just disappear from Earth's surface, but from time itself? This is the most exotic, most mind-bending theory out there, the space-time anomaly. According to this idea, MH370 may have flown into a natural rift in the fabric of space and time, a kind of portal, a glitch in the matrix, a moment where the rules of physics don't apply. As wild as that sounds, the Indian Ocean has long been tied to stories of unexplained phenomena. Much like the Bermuda Triangle, this part of the world has been home to missing ships, strange lights, and bizarre weather events for centuries. Some sailors have even reported electrical fog that messes with compasses and causes time distortions. Could MH370 have flown into something like that? And then, the truly strange part, a few reports claim MH370 was spotted years after it vanished. One of the most controversial sightings came from a group of fishermen off the coast of the Maldives. They described seeing a massive jet flying unusually low over the ocean. No markings, no sound of distress, just a silent machine cutting through the sky, flying a direction no commercial airline would ever take. Others believe the plane may reappear, literally. Like something out of a science fiction story, they think MH370 will come back at some point in the future. Maybe a year from now, maybe 100. Frozen in time, untouched by decay with passengers who haven't aged a second. It's the kind of idea you'd expect in an episode of The Twilight Zone. But it keeps people talking. Some even tie this theory to strange noises picked up in the southern Indian Ocean. Low metallic sounds, pulsing frequencies, signals that don't match any natural source. Were these echoes of a torn dimension? Glitches from something that briefly left our world? MH370's story is wrapped in silence. A flight that seemed so ordinary became a global obsession. A haunting question that won't go away. The space-time anomaly theory may be far-fetched, but then again so is a 270-ton airliner disappearing off the face of the Earth. Well, if a time portal theory for MH370 sounds too wild, wait until you hear about a plane that vanished and landed 35 years later with skeletons still on board. Let's dive into the strangest plane disappearances in history. You may have never heard of Santiago Flight 513, but once you do, you'll never forget it. The story has lived for decades in aviation lore. Some call it urban legend, others are convinced it's real. Either way, it's impossible to ignore. And the way it connects to what we just discussed with MH370? Unsettling. The story begins in 1954, when Santiago Airlines Flight 513 took off from Aachen, West Germany, on a routine route to Porto Alegre, Brazil. It was a long-haul flight but a completely normal one for the time. The plane, a Lockheed Super Constellation, took off with 88 people on board. Crew, families, businessmen, all expecting to land in South America by nightfall. But the plane never made it. It vanished over the Atlantic Ocean. No radio contact, no distress call, no trace. Just like that, gone. Authorities launched a search, but not a single piece of wreckage was ever found. The incident was quietly closed, labeled a tragic loss over open water. Families mourned, and the world moved on. Then something absolutely bizarre happened. In October 1989, a plane suddenly appeared in the skies over Porto Alegre, Brazil. It circled the airport several times, ignoring radio calls from the tower. The control tower watched in confusion as this vintage aircraft, not seen in commercial service for decades, lined up for landing and touched down perfectly on the runway. Security rushed to the aircraft. What they found would send shivers through aviation history. According to reports, the cabin was intact. The engines were still running, and inside, every single person was still in their seat. But they were nothing more than skeletons. No sign of decay, no signs of trauma, just 88 perfectly placed human remains, frozen in time. Some say the plane flew through a time distortion, a rip in space where time passes differently, like a bubble in the sky, that it was trapped there for over 3 decades before finally returning to Earth. There are skeptics, of course. No official records from Santiago Airlines survive. The Brazilian government has never confirmed the story. And yet, details of the event have circulated since the 80s. True or not, what makes the Santiago 513 story so compelling is how closely it mirrors the questions we ask about MH370. Could a plane really vanish? Not because of mechanical failure or sabotage, but because it left our reality altogether. Could MH370 still be flying, somewhere beyond what we understand? If Santiago 513 returned 35 years later, could MH370 one day do the same? It's an idea that creeps under your skin, and it's only the beginning. Before there was MH370, there was Amelia Earhart, the most famous pilot in history and the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic. But it was her final journey in 1937 that became one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time. While attempting to circle the globe in her Lockheed Electra, Amelia and her navigator, Fred Noonan, vanished somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Radio contact was lost, and no confirmed trace of the aircraft was ever found. But here's where it gets strange. Some researchers believe Earhart didn't crash into the sea at all. One theory claims she landed on a tiny island called Nikumororo, surviving for a time as a castaway. Bones and objects found there hint at the possibility. Yet another theory takes things further, suggesting she may have been captured by foreign forces, possibly taken to Saipan, and died in custody. If that's true, her disappearance wasn't an accident, it was a cover-up. Even decades later, documents and eyewitness accounts still surface, keeping the mystery alive. What really happened to Amelia Earhart? Did she die alone on an island, or did someone erase her from history? One of the most legendary vanishings in aviation didn't involve one plane. It involved 5. In 1945, 5 U.S. Navy Avenger bombers, collectively called Flight 19, departed from Fort Lauderdale for a training mission over the Atlantic. Everything was routine, until radio contacts started breaking up. The pilots sounded confused. Their compasses stopped working. They didn't know where they were. And then, silence. The entire formation disappeared. No debris, no survivors, nothing. Even more chilling, the rescue plane sent to find them also vanished. The military launched one of the largest air-sea searches in history, but Flight 19 was gone. Over time, this incident helped give birth to the legend of the Bermuda Triangle, a mysterious zone where planes and ships reportedly vanish without explanation. Some blame magnetic anomalies, others suggest freak storms or even time slips. Whatever the cause, the case remains open to this day. 5 planes, trained pilots, perfect weather, and no return. The Bermuda Triangle keeps its secrets well. In 1962, a military charter plane called Flying Tiger Line Flight 739 vanished over the Pacific with 107 people on board, including soldiers headed to Vietnam. It took off from Guam, expected to land in the Philippines. But somewhere along the way, it disappeared, without a distress call, without radar loss, without a single trace of wreckage. The plane was a Lockheed Super Constellation, a sturdy 4-engine aircraft. The weather was clear, the crew was experienced. Yet nothing was ever found, not a seat cushion, not a wing, not a life vest. Commercial vessels in the area saw a bright flash in the sky around the time of the disappearance, but no crash site was ever located. What's even more puzzling? The U.S. government quickly classified parts of the investigation. Some believe the plane may have been carrying sensitive cargo, or personnel with knowledge of covert operations. Was it sabotage? Was the plane downed intentionally? Or did it simply fall into one of the ocean's deepest, darkest trenches? More than 60 years later, families still have no answers, just silence. Beneath the dark, shifting waters of the Bermuda Triangle, something unnatural may be hiding. For years, rumors have swirled about a massive pyramid lurking beneath the surface. Not a natural formation, but something seemingly designed. Smooth, sharp-edged, and impossibly symmetrical. Deep-sea scans have picked up strange shapes resting on the ocean floor, fueling theories that an ancient structure is buried in the depths. The idea of a pyramid beneath the waves sounds impossible, and yet sonar images have shown something there, something that doesn't belong. Some reports claim the structure is made of glass-like material, almost transparent, and much larger than the pyramids of Egypt. Scientists have dismissed these claims, but divers exploring the area have spoken of eerie sensations, sudden equipment malfunctions, and an unsettling silence that seems to swallow sound itself. There's another reason why this discovery unsettles researchers: the location. The supposed pyramid sits near the Bimini Road, an underwater rock formation that many believe to be the remains of an ancient city. Could it be connected to the lost civilization of Atlantis? Some believe the pyramid might have once stood on land before a catastrophic event pulled it beneath the sea. Others suggest something even stranger, that it was never built by human hands at all. What if this pyramid is more than just stone? Could it be generating energy? Some theorists suggest it might be a remnant of an advanced civilization, a structure that still holds power after thousands of years. Others whisper about something more ominous, something watching from the deep, something we were never meant to find. Ships disappear at sea. Storms, mechanical failures, and human error can take their toll. But what happens when a ship vanishes for nearly a century, and then mysteriously reappears? The SS Cotopaxi was a steam-powered freighter that left Charleston, South Carolina in December 1925, heading toward Havana. It never arrived. No distress calls, no debris, just another vessel swallowed by the Bermuda Triangle. For decades it was listed as missing, another unexplained loss in the cursed waters. Then, something impossible happened. In 2020, a rusted shipwreck was discovered off the coast of Florida. At first, it seemed like any other forgotten wreck, but upon closer inspection, researchers realized it was the Cotopaxi. The ship had supposedly disappeared without a trace, yet here it was, resting in the shallows as if it had been waiting to be found. What happened to it? Strangely, historical records didn't place the Cotopaxi anywhere near its final resting spot. How did it drift so far without being seen? And why had no one found it earlier? Theories started swirling. Some believe the ship was trapped in an undetected current, aimlessly carried through the ocean for decades. Others suggest something far stranger, that the ship had been caught in a rift, disappearing from reality itself before re-emerging almost a century later. There were no survivors, no messages left behind, only a decaying hull, rusted bones of a ship that had been lost to time. What happened to the crew? Did they vanish along with it, taken by something unseen? The answers are still buried in the depths, and the mystery of the Cotopaxi remains unsolved. The ocean is vast and unforgiving, but time is supposed to be constant. In the Bermuda Triangle, though, that rule doesn't always seem to apply. Pilots have reported losing minutes, even hours, without explanation. Sailors tell of clocks that stop working, watches that skip forward, and an eerie sensation of disorientation that makes no sense. One of the most chilling cases comes from 1970, when experienced pilot Bruce Gernon flew straight into something impossible. Gernon was traveling from the Bahamas to Florida when he saw a strange cloud formation in front of him. Not just a storm, but something else, a swirling tunnel of mist stretching for miles. The moment he entered, his instruments went haywire. His altimeter spun wildly, his radio crackled with static, and for several minutes he felt weightless, trapped in a thick electric fog. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it was over. Gernon's plane emerged from the cloud, and when he looked at his navigation system, he was somewhere he shouldn't be. He had covered 100 miles in what felt like a few minutes. Air traffic control confirmed it. He had somehow skipped over time and space itself. He wasn't the only one. Countless sailors have reported similar experiences, hours vanishing in an instant, clocks that seem to freeze, or compasses spinning as if they've lost all sense of direction. Scientists try to explain it away, blaming electromagnetic interference or rare atmospheric conditions, but those who have lived through it describe something else entirely. A force they can't see, pulling them into the unknown, warping reality itself. Could the Bermuda Triangle be home to a natural phenomenon that distorts time? Or is it something more? Whatever it is, those who have encountered it are never quite the same afterward. For centuries, stories of lost civilizations have fascinated explorers, but what if one of those civilizations wasn't just legend? Deep beneath the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, something unexpected has been found. Massive stone structures, eerily aligned, resting on the ocean floor. They look too organized to be natural, too precise to be coincidence. Some researchers believe they could be the remains of an ancient city, swallowed by the sea thousands of years ago. Sonar scans have picked up unusual formations, walls, terraces, and even what some claim is a pyramid. Near Bimini Island, divers discovered what is now called the Bimini Road, a long stretch of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in a straight path. Scientists argue it's just a natural rock formation, but the symmetry raises questions. How did nature carve such perfect lines? And why does the formation seem to lead toward deeper waters, as if it was once part of something greater? The most unsettling part is the depth at which these ruins lie. If they truly are man-made, then they must date back to a time when the sea level was far lower, long before recorded history. Some believe this could be evidence of a lost civilization, perhaps even the fabled Atlantis. Others wonder if it's something else entirely, something we're not meant to understand. As divers continue to explore, strange reports emerge, malfunctioning equipment, eerie whispers in the water, and an overwhelming sense that they are being watched. Whatever lies beneath the triangle, it refuses to give up its secrets easily. Navigation instruments work everywhere, except in the Bermuda Triangle. Over the years, countless pilots and sailors have reported compasses spinning out of control, GPS signals disappearing, and electrical systems shutting down without warning. Some aircraft have even vanished from radar completely, only to reappear miles away, as if they had been teleported. Scientists have tried to explain it, but the truth is, no one fully understands what's happening. One of the most famous cases involved Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers that disappeared in 1945. Before radio contact was lost, the flight leader reported his compass had stopped working. The planes were never found. Decades later, commercial pilots flying through the triangle have described similar experiences, watching their instruments fail one by one, hearing strange bursts of static on their radios, and even seeing glowing orbs hovering near their planes before everything returned to normal. Some researchers suggest there could be a magnetic vortex in the area, an unknown force disrupting electronic signals. Others believe underwater crystal formations, similar to those rumored to exist beneath the Bimini Road, could be emitting strange energy pulses. The most unsettling theory? That these disturbances aren't natural at all, that something or someone is causing them on purpose. Whatever the explanation, the Bermuda Triangle remains one of the only places on Earth where technology seems to stop working, leaving those who enter at the mercy of whatever force controls it. The ocean at night is a dark, endless void, but in the Bermuda Triangle the waters sometimes come alive, glowing with an eerie, unnatural light. Sailors have reported entire sections of the sea lighting up, casting an unearthly glow that spreads for miles. Some believe it's just bioluminescent plankton, tiny organisms that emit light when disturbed. But others suspect something far stranger. Reports go back centuries. Ancient navigators wrote about waters that shimmered like molten metal, glowing even when the sky was completely dark. In modern times, commercial ships have documented strange pulses of light deep beneath the waves, almost like something moving below the surface. Submarines passing through the area have picked up unexplained flashes, as if the ocean itself was flickering like a faulty light bulb. Scientists have tried to connect these glowing waters to natural phenomena, from chemical reactions to unusual electrical activity, but the sightings don't always match known patterns. Sometimes the light appears in shapes, perfect circles, swirling spirals, or long, glowing lines stretching toward the horizon. There are even stories of ships being surrounded by the glow, caught in an eerie, silent current before it suddenly vanishes, leaving behind only darkness. Could something unknown be causing these lights? Some speculate that the Bermuda Triangle might be home to a deep-sea phenomenon we have yet to understand. Others fear it's a sign of something even more unsettling, something hidden beneath the surface, waiting. The Bermuda Triangle is full of mysteries, but some of the most disturbing reports don't come from those who vanished. They come from those who made it back. Over the years, pilots and sailors have described encounters with something beyond explanation. Strange lights moving at impossible speeds, unidentified objects hovering just above the ocean, and eerie radio transmissions that seem to come from nowhere. Could something else be watching from the skies? One of the most famous cases comes from a commercial pilot flying near the triangle. As he approached the area, he saw bright lights darting through the clouds. They weren't normal aircraft. They moved too fast, changed direction in an instant, and didn't match anything on radar. Then, without warning, his instruments failed. The radio crackled with static, and a deep, distorted voice came through, speaking in a language he didn't understand. Moments later, the lights vanished, his instruments flickered back on, and air traffic control confirmed they had lost him from radar for several minutes. Other pilots have described massive, silent crafts emerging from the ocean, hovering in place before shooting into the sky at impossible speeds. Some ships have picked up strange signals, coded transmissions, voices speaking in unknown dialects, and eerie, rhythmic pulses coming from deep below the surface. Are these just strange atmospheric anomalies, or is something else lurking in the Bermuda Triangle? Scientists dismiss the idea of extraterrestrial involvement, but those who have seen the lights know what they experienced wasn't normal. Whatever is hiding in the triangle, it's not bound by the rules of our world. December 5th, 1945. 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger bombers took off from Florida for what should have been a routine training flight. The weather was clear, the mission simple. But within hours, all 5 planes and the 14 men aboard had vanished without a trace. The last radio messages from the flight were chilling. The squadron leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, reported that his compasses weren't working. The ocean didn't look right. He didn't know where they were. Ground control tried to guide them back, but something was wrong. Taylor's transmissions became more frantic. He described seeing strange cloud formations and a white, endless ocean below them. Other pilots reported the same. Something was distorting their vision, twisting the landscape beneath them. Then their signals faded into silence. The Navy immediately launched a rescue mission, sending a large PBM Mariner aircraft to find them. That plane disappeared too. No wreckage was ever found, no bodies, no debris, nothing. The official explanation blames navigational errors and bad weather, but that doesn't explain everything. How could 5 planes vanish at once? Why did their leader sound so disoriented? Some believe Flight 19 was pulled into an electromagnetic vortex, trapped in a rift in time, or even taken by an unknown force. Whatever happened that day, it marked the Bermuda Triangle as a place where the impossible becomes reality. There are places in the world where voices never truly disappear. In the Bermuda Triangle, distress signals have been picked up from ships that vanished long ago. Ghostly SOS calls crackle over the radio, desperate voices calling for help, but when rescue crews arrive, there's nothing there. One of the most chilling cases involved a cargo ship crossing the triangle. Late one night, the crew picked up a distress call on an open frequency. The voice on the other end was panicked, barely understandable, repeating the words, "They're coming! We can't see them!" The transmission cut off abruptly. The crew radioed back, asking for a location, but no response came. When they traced the source, it led them to a spot in the ocean where no ships had been reported for decades. Another case involved a Coast Guard vessel responding to an SOS from a fishing boat caught in a storm. The radio operator described hearing a man's voice, frantic and pleading for help, followed by static and a final whispered word, "Gone." The Coast Guard searched the area, but there was no wreckage, no sign of a distress beacon, nothing at all. When they checked their logs, they found that a fishing boat by that name had sunk in the exact location, 50 years earlier. Are these echoes from the past, somehow trapped in the triangle's mysterious energy fields? Or do they suggest something far stranger? That those lost in the Bermuda Triangle are still out there, trying to reach us from wherever they've been taken? The calls continue to this day, and no one knows who or what is sending them. The ocean is deep, but in the Bermuda Triangle, it is far deeper than most realize. Beneath the surface, hidden from sight, lie trenches that plunge into total darkness. These underwater canyons stretch for miles, their depths barely explored, their secrets untouched. Sonar scans have revealed unnatural formations, gaping chasms, smooth-edged walls, and deep fissures where no light has ever reached. What waits in these silent, black waters? Something moves down there. Deep-sea submersibles sent into the triangle have picked up strange readings, unexplained disturbances, objects shifting in the abyss, shadows that shouldn't exist. Some explorers claim their instruments detected enormous moving masses, far larger than any known marine creature. Others report their equipment failing entirely, as if something below was interfering with the signals. In 2011, a remote-operated vehicle exploring one of these trenches captured something unsettling. The footage showed an empty, rocky expanse, lifeless and still. Then, without warning, a massive, unidentifiable shape passed in front of the camera. It moved too quickly, too deliberately, before vanishing into the blackness. No one could explain it. Some dismissed it as a trick of the light, but those who reviewed the footage weren't so sure. Could these trenches be home to something undiscovered? The depths of the Bermuda Triangle remain one of the last unexplored frontiers on Earth. If something ancient lurks down there, it has had millennia to remain hidden. And maybe, just maybe, it prefers to stay that way. The ocean is never truly silent. Strange sounds echo through the depths, some natural, some not. But in the Bermuda Triangle, something has been heard that defies explanation. A deep, thunderous noise, loud enough to be picked up thousands of miles away. Scientists call it the bloop, but no one knows what caused it. First detected in 1997, the sound was unlike anything recorded before. It wasn't mechanical, it wasn't seismic, it was organic, and it was massive. The noise was so powerful that whatever produced it had to be larger than any known marine creature. Some researchers speculated it could be the sound of shifting ice, but others weren't convinced. The frequency was wrong. The pattern was unnatural. And most disturbingly, the sound originated from somewhere near the Bermuda Triangle. Since then, other unusual noises have been detected in the area. Deep, rhythmic pulses almost like a heartbeat. Strange mechanical clicking as if something huge and unknown were communicating in a language we don't understand. Submarines passing through have reported hearing metallic echoes in the water, reverberating through their hulls, sending chills through even the most experienced crews. Is something alive down there, something beyond our understanding? Some believe the bloop was a warning, a sound from the deep meant to go unheard. Others fear that whatever made it might still be listening. The ocean is vast, and in the Bermuda Triangle it seems to whisper back. A plane crashes, a ship sinks, And in most cases, there's a final record, a black box, a distress beacon, a last message from those on board. But in the Bermuda Triangle, those signals don't always make sense. Some never stop transmitting. Others send messages long after their source should be destroyed. One of the strangest cases came from a commercial airliner that vanished over the triangle. Hours after it was declared missing, air traffic control picked up a weak, static-filled transmission. It was the pilot's voice, distorted and fragmented, repeating the same phrase. "Where are we?" The signal faded, then cut off completely. The wreckage was never found. In another case, a ship that had gone down decades earlier began transmitting a distress signal, one that hadn't been detected since the day it disappeared. A passing vessel picked it up. But when they arrived at the coordinates, there was nothing but open ocean. The distress call continued for days before suddenly stopping, as if whatever sent it had finally been silenced. Scientists have tried to explain these phantom signals. Some believe they are echoes, radio waves trapped and rebroadcast years later, but others aren't so sure. How do transmissions come from planes that no longer exist? Why do these signals sometimes change, repeating words that weren't in the original distress calls? The Bermuda Triangle is a place where things vanish, but sometimes, just sometimes, they try to call back, and no one knows who or what is on the other end. A ship found adrift, untouched, yet completely abandoned. The Mary Celeste is one of the greatest maritime mysteries of all time. Discovered in 1872, floating eerily in the Atlantic, its sails were intact, cargo untouched, and no sign of violence. But the entire crew was gone, vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no struggle. The lifeboat was missing, but why would the crew abandon a perfectly seaworthy ship? Food was still on the table, belongings left behind as if they had expected to return. Some believe the Bermuda Triangle played a role. Though the ship was found further east, theories suggest it may have drifted from the triangle after a bizarre event. An unseen force, an electromagnetic disruption, or something stranger. Even today, no one knows what happened to the crew. The Mary Celeste remains a ghost ship, forever sailing in mystery, its final moments lost to the depths of the unknown. Compasses are supposed to point north, but in the Bermuda Triangle they don't always follow the rules. Pilots and sailors have long reported their instruments going haywire, spinning wildly, locking in the wrong direction, or simply refusing to work at all. Some have watched their navigation systems reset mid-flight, leaving them lost in a vast, featureless ocean. One of the strangest things about the triangle is its unusual magnetic field. Scientists know that near this area, the Earth's magnetic variance shifts unpredictably. Some believe this could explain why so many vessels go off course, but that doesn't explain why pilots have seen their compasses suddenly reverse direction, or why entire fleets have disappeared after reporting navigational issues. Theories range from underwater mineral deposits interfering with electronics, to unknown energy sources deep beneath the ocean. Some even suggest that a hidden force, something we don't yet understand, is affecting time and space itself. Whatever the cause, one thing is certain: in the Bermuda Triangle, even the most reliable instruments can't be trusted. Deep in the Bermuda Triangle, a gaping void swallows light itself, a blue hole plunging into the unknown. These massive underwater sinkholes stretch hundreds of feet down, their depths untouched by sunlight. Scientists have explored many blue holes around the world, but those within the triangle seem different. Strange. Almost alive. Divers who enter report an eerie silence, an unnatural stillness that presses against them like a hidden force. Some describe sudden equipment failures, as if something in the depths doesn't want them there. Others have gone deeper and never returned. Sonar scans have picked up unusual shapes at the bottom, smooth structures, unnatural formations, before interference cuts off the signal entirely. What lies below? Some believe these blue holes connect to a vast underwater tunnel system, leading to places unknown. Others suspect they're more than just physical formations, that they distort time and space, swallowing those who dare to venture too far. Could they be the key to the Bermuda Triangle's greatest mysteries? Or are they something far more dangerous? An open door to whatever waits on the other side. At the bottom of the Atlantic, deep in the darkness where the Titanic rests, something eerie stands out. A pair of shoes lying side by side in the silt, no bones, no body, just shoes untouched for over a century. They belong to someone who never made it to safety. The water and time have erased almost everything else, but these shoes remain, frozen in place like silent witnesses to the disaster. It's unsettling to see them so perfectly arranged. They weren't tossed around by the currents or buried under debris. They sit just as they were when their owner slipped beneath the waves. Some say the shoes mark the exact spot where a victim came to rest before the ocean slowly took everything else. Over the years, more shoes have been spotted in the wreckage. Some are alone, others in pairs, still shaped by the feet that once filled them. Leather preserves well in deep-sea conditions, making these one of the last traces of those lost that night. Unlike the luxurious artifacts displayed in museums, these shoes tell a quieter, more haunting story. There's no gold or fine craftsmanship, just everyday footwear, waiting in the cold dark, long after their owners vanished. Deeper inside the wreck, past the twisted remains of the grand staircase, something unexpected lingers, chandeliers still hanging, swaying gently in the ocean currents. These weren't just light fixtures, they were enormous shimmering centerpieces meant to impress Titanic's wealthiest passengers. Now, covered in deep-sea corrosion, they give off an eerie presence, like ghosts of the ship's lost grandeur. The glass has shattered, the metal arms are coated in rust, but some of these chandeliers still cling to the ceilings, refusing to fall. Divers have captured haunting images of them, frozen in time, dangling over the wreck like eerie reminders of the last elegant night on board. There is no light now, only the flickering glow of submersibles moving through the ruins. But once, these very chandeliers reflected the laughter, music, and conversations of passengers who had no idea their voyage was about to end. Among the wreckage, some of Titanic's greatest treasures have been lost forever. But some things aren't just lost, they're missing, as if they vanished without explanation. That brings us to one of the strangest unsolved mysteries of the wreck site. For decades, explorers have searched the Titanic's remains for one specific artifact, a missing safe, rumored to contain valuables that belong to one of the ship's wealthiest passengers, but it has never been found. Safes have been recovered, some still locked, but this particular one, the subject of countless theories, has simply disappeared. It was said to contain documents, jewels, or even gold. Some believe it was ripped from its place during the sinking into a part of the wreck yet to be explored. Others think it was looted in the early expeditions before strict conservation laws were put in place. There's even speculation that it remains hidden somewhere deep in the ruins, covered in debris, waiting for someone to uncover it. Among the many personal treasures lost on the Titanic, some were never meant to hold value, at least not in the way people think of treasure. Some objects weren't expensive, but they meant everything to the ones who carried them. One of the most heartbreaking finds proves that. A small waterlogged teddy bear was pulled from the wreckage, one of the most fragile artifacts to ever be recovered. It had once belonged to a child, a passenger whose journey ended far too soon. The bear, still intact after decades in the deep, carries an eerie weight. Unlike the lavish jewelry and fine china, this was something personal, something loved. No one knows exactly who owned it. Maybe it was clutched tightly in the arms of a child during the chaos, lost in the confusion as lifeboats filled up. Maybe it was packed away in a suitcase meant to bring comfort in a new home across the ocean. Wherever it was when disaster struck, it now stands as a quiet symbol of the lives that were lost. Not everything on the Titanic was meant to survive. Some items should have been consumed by time and water, but against all odds, they remain. And some of those things hold a strange, almost impossible quality. Like the unopened bottles of champagne, still sitting at the bottom of the ocean, their contents untouched for over a century. Scattered across the wreck site, resting in the cold, dark silence, are bottles of champagne that were never opened. Some still contain their original liquid, perfectly sealed, untouched by time. More than 100 years have passed, yet deep in the Atlantic, these bottles remain as they were on the night of the sinking. They were meant for celebration, perhaps for a toast to a successful voyage, a business deal, or an engagement. Instead, they drifted down into the deep as the Titanic broke apart above them. What makes them even more eerie is that some bottles still hold their fizz. Scientists have speculated that the intense pressure at the bottom of the ocean may have preserved the carbonation, meaning that if someone were to open one today it might still bubble like it did in 1912. These bottles survived where people did not. They stayed intact while the ship around them was reduced to ruins. And yet, no one will ever drink them. They are relics of a moment in time that can never be revisited, souvenirs of a party that ended in disaster. There was another sound that filled Titanic's halls that night, a sound that became legendary. It wasn't a voice or a warning, it was music. A single violin played until the very end now holds one of the most haunting stories tied to the wreck. Wallace Hartley's violin is one of the most famous artifacts ever recovered from the Titanic. It's the instrument he played as the ship sank, leading his band in one last performance meant to calm the panicked crowd. Survivors recalled hearing the music even as lifeboats drifted away, a strange and sorrowful melody floating over the water. Then, silence. For years, people believed the violin was lost forever. After all, it was made of wood, something that should have disintegrated in the ocean. But against all odds, it was found. Preserved in a leather case, it had survived the disaster, buried in time. When it was finally brought to the surface, the discovery shocked the world. It wasn't just an instrument, it was a piece of the final moments of Titanic, something that had been there as the ship slipped into darkness. Some say the violin carries a curse, a tragic energy that lingers after all these years. Others see it as a final fragile link to the souls lost that night. Either way, it remains one of the most haunting objects connected to the Titanic. One that carries not just music, but the echoes of a disaster that still chills the world today. Deep in the wreckage, resting beneath a thick layer of rust and marine life, lies one of the Titanic's most overlooked yet haunting remains, its massive propellers. These weren't just ordinary ship parts. Each blade was over 16 feet wide, designed to drive the Titanic across the Atlantic with unstoppable force. Yet when disaster struck, all that power meant nothing. The engines, the pride of Harland and Wolff's shipbuilders, became useless in the face of an iceberg that ripped through the hull like paper. The propellers remain eerily intact on the seafloor, but signs of the Titanic's violent end are clear. The force of the sinking, the pressure of the deep, and the slow decay of time have twisted and corroded parts of the structure. The once polished bronze now looks ghostly, covered in rusticles, strange organic formations that eat away at the metal like a slow-moving disease. One of the propellers, still connected to the stern section, is half buried in the seabed, while debris from the wreck scatters around it like forgotten remnants of a lost era. It's unsettling to think about what this propeller represents. At full power, it could move the ship at nearly 24 miles per hour, one of the fastest ocean liners of its time. But in the crucial moments before impact, reversing the engines did little to slow the Titanic down. The ship's fate was sealed the moment it struck ice, and all that remains now is a broken piece of engineering lost to the deep. And yet, even heavier than the propellers, even more massive than the engines, lies another piece of Titanic's remains, one that was built to withstand time itself. The Titanic needed something enormous to hold it in place when docked. That's why its anchor chain was forged with links the size of a grown man's torso, designed to carry the weight of the largest anchor ever fitted on a ship at the time, over 15 tons of steel, built to last forever. But today those chains sit broken on the ocean floor, stretching through the wreckage like giant rusted veins of a ghost ship. The sheer scale of the anchor chain is hard to grasp until you see the photos from Titanic's construction. Workers stood beside the links, dwarfed by their size, like ants next to a giant's tools. This chain was designed to withstand almost anything, except the disaster that tore Titanic apart. When the ship split in two, the violent descent to the seafloor dragged parts of the chain with it, twisting the links, snapping sections apart, and leaving others eerily untouched. Despite decades underwater, some parts of the chain remain surprisingly well preserved. The metal, once strong and gleaming, is now covered in deep-sea decay, but the structure is still recognizable. It's a piece of Titanic's skeleton, a reminder of the impossible weight it was built to carry. But unlike the ship itself, which now crumbles in the deep, another part of Titanic was lost completely. Something so beautiful, so intricate, that the ocean took it away without a trace. There was a time when sunlight streamed through the Titanic's first-class lounge, casting colorful patterns on the floor, illuminating the luxurious carpets, and dancing across the wood-paneled walls. The lounge wasn't just any room. It was one of the most stunning spaces on the ship, a place where the wealthiest passengers sipped their tea in quiet elegance. Its greatest feature? The massive stained glass windows designed to make travelers feel as though they were in the grand halls of an aristocratic mansion rather than at sea. But unlike the ship's chandeliers, railings, and even furniture, the stained glass windows didn't survive. As the Titanic sank, the force of the water rushing in likely shattered them instantly, sending fragments drifting into the darkness. Unlike metal and porcelain, glass doesn't last long under such extreme conditions. Not a single trace of those breathtaking windows has ever been found in the wreck. They are completely gone, erased from history, their beauty lost forever. It's strange to think that something so fragile was once part of something so powerful. The Titanic was built with the strongest materials of its time, with steel plates and iron rivets meant to endure the worst conditions at sea. And yet what remains of it today is a ghostly ruin, where even the strongest materials are slowly being consumed by time. The stained glass windows may be lost, but their memory lingers in the descriptions, the photographs, and the eerie realization that some parts of the Titanic will never be seen again. Scattered across the seabed, hidden among the wreckage, are small objects that once belonged to the passengers of the Titanic. A pair of glasses, a leather suitcase, a pocket watch stuck at the exact moment the ship went under. These are the things people carried with them, the last remnants of lives that never finished their journey. They tell stories no history book can. Unlike the grand artifacts, the chandeliers, the fine china, the ship's towering structures, these items are deeply personal. They were held, used, and cherished by real people. A pair of gloves found perfectly preserved in the deep-sea silt belonged to someone's father, husband, or son. A postcard, never mailed, still bears the careful handwriting of a passenger who likely never made it to a lifeboat. Some of the most haunting discoveries are letters, words frozen in time, written with no knowledge of the disaster about to unfold. Leather has survived remarkably well in the deep, thanks to the lack of oxygen and light, keeping these items eerily intact. The ocean may have swallowed the Titanic, but it couldn't erase every trace of those who were aboard. Some of these personal items have been recovered and placed in museums, while others remain on the seafloor, untouched for more than a century. But among all the artifacts found, one stands out as particularly strange, an object tied to an ancient mystery, one that some believe carried a curse. Among the Titanic's cargo, hidden away in a wooden crate, was an Egyptian artifact bound for a museum in America. The details surrounding it are murky. Some say it was a mummified priestess, others claim it was a sacred tablet inscribed with ancient texts. But one thing is certain, this object had a reputation long before it ever boarded the Titanic. Stories from the time suggested it was cursed, that anyone who possessed it met with misfortune. And then, it sank with the most infamous disaster in maritime history. While skeptics dismiss the legend, the eerie coincidences surrounding the artifact are hard to ignore. Before the Titanic, it was said to have caused strange accidents, financial ruin, even death for those who tried to move it. Some crew members supposedly refused to handle the crate, fearing the stories of bad luck tied to it. After the sinking, whispers of the mummy's curse spread like wildfire. Some survivors swore they heard passengers talking about it just before the collision. Others believed it had something to do with the ship's terrible fate. Of course, science doesn't support the idea of curses, but the Titanic is filled with enough real-life tragedy that myths don't seem entirely out of place. The mystery deepened when explorers searched the wreck and found no trace of the artifact. Did it break free from its crate and drift into the depths? Was it ever really on board at all? The truth remains unknown, but if strange forces were at play that night, one mistake stood above the rest, a tiny oversight that might have changed everything. It was small, ordinary, just a simple key, but it was missing at the moment it mattered most. This key should have unlocked a locker in the crow's nest, a locker containing the lookout crew's binoculars. Without them, Titanic's lookouts were forced to rely on the naked eye, scanning the dark ocean for any sign of danger. And on the night of April 14, 1912, that danger came in the form of an iceberg, looming in the distance, almost invisible against the Black Sea. The key belonged to Second Officer David Blair, a crew member who was reassigned at the last minute. In his rushed departure, he accidentally took the key with him, unaware of the role it would play in history. When the lookouts realized they had no binoculars, it was too late. By the time they spotted the iceberg, Titanic was moving too fast to turn in time. The ship's fate had already been sealed. After the sinking, the key resurfaced years later, sold at an auction, its true significance finally understood. Could it have saved the Titanic? Some experts believe it wouldn't have made a difference. Others argue that with binoculars the iceberg might have been seen earlier, giving the crew a crucial extra minute to react. In the end, the key became another small but haunting detail in the long list of what-ifs surrounding the Titanic. one of many tiny missteps that added up to one of history's greatest disasters. Amid the rust and decay of the Titanic's wreck, something unexpected has been found. Tiny flashes of light in the darkness. Jewelry still resting on the seafloor, untouched for more than a century. Diamond necklaces, gold bracelets, sapphire rings, luxuries once worn by passengers who had no idea they were on their final voyage. Unlike the ship's chandeliers or furniture, these pieces remain almost unchanged, still shimmering under the lights of deep-sea submersibles. Some of this jewelry has been recovered, placed on display in museums, but much of it is still down there, scattered in the debris, hidden among broken china and crumbling wood. A collection of jewels was found inside a leather pouch, preserved so well that the gems still gleamed as if they had been dropped only yesterday. Among the pieces were brooches, cufflinks, and a striking sapphire and diamond necklace, one that may have belonged to a first-class passenger whose name has long been forgotten. Unlike coins or artifacts marked with White Star Line insignias, jewelry is intensely personal. It belonged to someone specific, someone who once put it on without knowing it would never leave the ocean. These aren't just relics of wealth, they're remnants of lives lost, gifts, heirlooms, or souvenirs from a world that sank in the early hours of April 15, 1912. And jewelry wasn't the only thing recovered that carried an intimate connection to the past. Some items held something far more unusual, something that could still be experienced, even after a century underwater. In the wreckage of the Titanic, inside a leather suitcase buried in the silt, a small collection of perfume vials was found. At first glance they looked like any other relic. Delicate glass containers, their labels faded with time, but when the bottles were carefully opened, something shocking happened. The scent was still there. Over 100 years after the sinking, the perfumes trapped inside these vials still carried their original fragrance. The suitcase belonged to Adolf Saalfeld, a first-class passenger and a professional perfumer. He was on his way to America, carrying dozens of scent samples meant to launch a new business. He never got the chance. His case, along with his perfumes, went down with the ship. But the deep-sea conditions preserved them in an almost unnatural way. When researchers uncorked one of the bottles, they described being overwhelmed by a powerful floral aroma, like stepping into a garden from another era. These perfumes weren't just remnants of luxury. They were a physical, almost ghostly connection to the Titanic's passengers. The scent they left behind was the same one they smelled as they walked the grand hallways or dined in the first-class saloon. Unlike most artifacts, which only allow people to see the past, these bottles allowed people to experience it in a completely different way. It's a rare reminder that some things, even delicate things, can outlast disaster, waiting in the dark for someone to find them again. Among the many relics recovered from the Titanic, one stands out as particularly haunting. A compass, still intact, its needle frozen in place. This instrument once guided the largest and most luxurious ship in the world, pointing the way toward a future that would never come. Now it sits silent, its journey long over. The compass was part of Titanic's navigation system, meant to help the crew chart their course across the Atlantic. It had been set toward New York, but after the collision, direction no longer mattered. As the ship's bow dipped beneath the waves, the world's greatest ocean liner had only one course left: straight down. The very device designed to lead the Titanic safely through the ocean now rests in the deep, with no destination, no purpose, no path forward. Unlike other artifacts, this one is different. It wasn't personal like a piece of jewelry, nor was it decorative like a chandelier. It was functional, built for one thing: to guide. And yet, even the most precise instruments on board couldn't change the events of that night. The Titanic's compass now lies still, a reminder that no amount of planning, no level of technology could have prevented the disaster once it was already set in motion. Scattered in the wreckage, lying half buried in the sand, are pieces of silverware. Forks, knives, and spoons still arranged in neat rows where the ship's cupboards once stood. They were meant for Titanic's passengers, some for extravagant multi-course meals in first class, others for simple dinners in third class. But the people who were supposed to use them never got the chance. These are everyday objects, yet their presence on the ocean floor makes them unsettling. Plates have been found stacked together, ready to be set on a table that no one would ever sit at. In the debris field, cutlery is sometimes found resting beside personal belongings. A fork next to a purse, a knife near a lost pair of boots. It's as if the meal had been interrupted mid-course, the people swept away, but the objects left behind. Unlike furniture or grand decorations, silverware tells a quieter, more human story. The passengers may have had different social standings, but they all gathered for meals, shared conversations, and planned for what they thought was another day at sea. Those small metal utensils, now rusted and worn, are all that remain of moments that were supposed to be ordinary. The Titanic was filled with music. Pianos were placed throughout the ship, from grand saloons to third-class common areas, meant to entertain passengers on their long journey. But of all the instruments aboard, the most spectacular was the grand piano in the first-class reception room. Polished, elegant, and massive, it was the heart of the ship's social gatherings. And like everything else, it went down with the Titanic. Now, no trace of it remains. While chandeliers still hang and dinnerware still rests in the wreckage, the grand piano has vanished. Wood doesn't last in deep-sea conditions, and any remains of the instrument were likely consumed by the ocean long ago. But some survivors swore they could still hear it playing even after the ship began to sink. In the chaos, as passengers rushed to the decks, as lifeboats were lowered, someone was still at the piano, filling the air with music one last time. It's eerie to think about what remains and what was erased completely. Some objects have survived untouched, while others, like the Titanic's most beautiful piano, exist now only in memory. That's about it. Write in the comments which find from the Titanic scared you the most. For more useful information, watch other videos.